Bump is a call that we make frequently in our defense. Bump, when it's caught as a call when given by itself, basically tells the defensive lineman to move one full gap from the gap they're in to the next adjacent gap. So, for instance, here, this would be a bump right call. So the defensive lineman, which normally would line up in a 5 technique in clamp, is going to move to a 3. From outside shoulder tackle, the outside shoulder of the guard. The nose, which is normally in a head up, is going to now be in a shade to the strong side, attacking the outside shoulder of the guard. The difference in bump and clamp for this strong side defensive end is the bump call turns him into a true base mode player instead of using the heavy technique. If he were playing clamp, he would line up in a tight 5, but if he gets a base block from the offensive tackle, he's going to win inside of that base block and defend and play the B gap. Here in a bump call, he becomes a C gap player. The purpose of this call for us is to, number one, it addresses the issues in this defense, which are the edges. It gives us a little bit more of a solid edge. It gives us a true C gap presence, and it allows to create some indecisiveness in this tackle as to where, when he base blocks, is this defensive end going to hit and work inside, or is he going to stay outside? Also, what it does is, one of the reasons we got into a tight front was to address the B-gap issues that were created in our traditional over and under front that we had been in for so many years. In tight front, as you cover up the B-gap over and over again, moving to a bump front, it opens that B-gap but changes the fits. Now the linebackers know that instead of being an A to C-gap defender, one of them is an A-gap defender, one of them is a B-gap defender, but their reads do not change. They are still H-back to guard first. If there's no H-back, tailback to guard. So it doesn't change. Bump for everyone else is played and fit just like vice and clamp. I think the most important thing to notice here is 45, the defensive end, great get off by him, rolls his hips, his hands are inside, but he's going to play the C-gap. He's going to stay outside of that offensive tackle. He's going to sit in that position until he sees the ball declare. When the ball declares, then he plays back inside to B-gap. The 3 technique, his get-off is really good. He's an undersized defensive lineman. He's rolling out of his hips. His hands are inside. But earlier when we talked about front terms, we talked about leveraging a block. We work almost every day with our defensive linemen on the concept that if you end up down the middle of a blocker, you should immediately leverage back to your gap. So that's something we drill. By not doing this and giving this big open B gap here, this linebacker feels like he needs to take this B gap. Luckily in this defense, they run insert zone here. We have a safety tied to the fit. He is keying that H-back. So as that H-back leads on the inside linebacker, the inside linebacker does a really good job of getting knocked back on that H-back. The safety is there to clean up and make that tackle if the end doesn't make a really good play here. What we would like to happen is for this guy come off on this block just like he does, attack the blocker, slide back into that B gap. That way that linebacker can play A back and show presence in that play. We see a bump call here. This is bump left. You can see the defensive end. Good job of squeezing down. Now, he collisions that kick-out block, but he is a crush player. He should be inside that kick-out block. By not getting inside, he allows that ball to bend back on our defense. One of the issues also is this backside linebacker. We talk about leveraging the ball. As the left guard or the right guard in the H-back pull, he plays over the top but crosses the face of the ball. Now, this is the advantage of being in quarters, having this safety keying that H, being tied to the box. He is the true cutback player. So it allows that linebacker to play fast. I like him declaring the fit. I like him coming over the top. We would just like him to leverage the ball a little more, but the safety does a good job of coming up and making the tackle. But again, in the end, you would probably still say that that was a win for the offense because they got 5 yards on first down. Here we have a bump right call. The defensive end comes off. He's on an outside shade. Really good job by this nose. He gets head up on the center, but he is attacking. I think, and I say it over and over again, but the key to a double team is if you will just attack one man, put the double team on two levels, you don't allow them to get shoulder to shoulder, get hip to hip, push you on that double team. He gets knocked back on the center. When the guard comes off to the linebacker, you can now see he gets back in his gap, leverages the block, and makes the tackle. And that, to me, is really good. As he was right down the middle, he pressed back to that gap and was in position to tackle the ball carrier, which is something that we drill all the time. We are bump right here. Now, I think one of the issues in tight front that's created is this C gap here. Because when you're in tight and you're in a 4, a 0, and a 4, you've got an exposed C gap. One of the issues could be understanding that if it is in gap scheme, that this tight end has a clean shot to your backside linebacker. You can address this through line movement. You can address this through a backer plug, which we'll talk about later. Also, this linebacker needs to be aware that if we are in vice, we're in tight front, and there's a tight end opposite you, if you get any pull in that direction, get your eyes to that guy because he's going to be blocking you. You're about to be in a street fight with that guy. You want to be looking at him. Bump allows us now to get presence in that C gap, have that defensive lineman there. He draws that double team. Once again, really good job. He rolls his hips off the ball. He knocks back the tackle, which allows and now the tight end comes and hits him, but we don't get any push on that double team. Number 2 is good tight fit right here. He needs to come. When we talk about our drill session, we'll talk about knockback on the puller. This is what I want. I love how tight he is, but I want him to come on through and get knocked back on that puller. He's obviously given up a little bit of size. He allows that guy to kick him out, and that creates a little bit of a crease. Really good job by 58 of leveraging the ball. We talk about the ball goes to your right, keep it to your right, fires his feet, plays off. But just a really good job of 50, drawing that double team, coming off the double team, and allowing his teammates to rally and make the tackle. For us, under. It's one of the most frequent calls that we make. The only difference between bump and under is that under tells the nickel to walk up to the line of scrimmage. Now, for most people in this defense, you would call the nickel a jack. We call him a nickel because for several years we were an over-under front 4-3 team. When we went and started migrating to a 3-man line, we would take a defensive end out. We would keep the Sam linebacker on the field. We would bring a nickel, which usually for us was another outside linebacker. Now, how we play this guy will depend more on what type of player is he. Is he more of an outside linebacker, defensive back that can play down some, or is he more of a defensive end that can play off the line and in space some? And so I think that really determines how much under front and how much mint front you would want to play, which we'll go over in our next slide. But for everyone else on the defense, when we call under, the linebackers give the defensive line a bump left call. This outside linebacker, the nickel, is going to walk up to the line of scrimmage. By rule, he is a box player. By rule on our front, we tell our defensive ends, if you have a 1 technique to your side, you're a crush. If you have a 3 technique, you're a box. Now, we can easily change that. We can say, okay, this week, if you have an H-back to you and under, you're going to be a crush player. Or we could give them a crush call. So we always have the ability to change those edges, but we have camp rules that they can line up and play. Okay, you can see right here, they gave them a bump left call. They don't need to know anything besides that they're bumped. They get in their shade. They're in base mode now. You can see good get off. Once again, he's an undersized guy. He's 190, 195 pounds right there. I would just like him, as soon as he sees that puller, I would like him to redirect a little quicker. You can see the defensive end is tentative. If he would engage and attack that offensive tackle, it would create momentum in that direction to allow him to get knocked back with that kick-out block. He's tentative to attack the tackle, and he allows the H-back to collision and initiate contact on him.